Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another stream. My name is Anto. This evening, we're going to be doing some adventure prep and world building, just like we do in all of our streams. Same thing we do every night, Pinky, try and take over the world. Hopefully you can all see and hear me. I am feeling incredibly rushed off my feet this evening. It is so close to Christmas and everything needs to be done. And I was in the bath like 5 minutes ago and I was like, oh, it's stream night and I need to be live like right now. And I also need to wrap like a million presents. And it's like Christmas Eve next week and New Year's Eve the week after. It's been a lot, y'all. But welcome into the stream. This evening we're going to be doing some adventure prep, getting ready for my next session of D&D. We might do a little bit of world building depending on what comes up in the adventure prep. And we're just going to hang out, have a good time. As usual, get involved in the chat, ask questions, post your thoughts, etc., etc. It always makes these things better the more people get involved. I have to ask, can you all hear me? I resisted the urge as soon as I came on. I try and resist the urge. I always try and resist the urge, but I have to ask because I have such paranoia about talking into the endless void. And let me know how you're all doing. Let me know how you're all getting on with your like Christmas wrapping and all of the it's so much. There is so much to do and so much to be done, and it's all so much. And if you can't tell, I'm at peak stress levels with everything that needs to be done at this time of year. But this should be a good way to unwind, do a little bit of adventure prep and world building stuff. So we're going to go right ahead and switch over to the desktop view, and I'm going to make sure that you can see all of the right stuff. Let me drag this onto a bigger window so I can actually see that you can see all of the right stuff and get everything framed properly. There we go. So this evening, what I want to do is I want to do some adventure prep. My players are going to be going north, leaving the city of Mornburg and the Forest of Spikes, the region that they've been adventuring in for the last couple of weeks, last month or so. They're heading north, bound to the middle of the nation of Aeldal, which is this kind of section on the Never Eat Shredded Wheat western side of the island of Or in the jewel cities of Talavar, and they want to go and do some personal quest stuff. And along the way, they're going to be passing a whole bunch of random hexes, go into a bunch of kind of monster of the week style gameplay, that more traditional hex crawly style gameplay. What they call the rat-based gameplay, where they scurry about the map doing adventures and getting involved in all kinds of shenanigans. So what I want to do this evening is figure out what they're going to run into next session. So I know that they are heading northbound. They're going to be going along the main road, and they've expressed interest in stopping off at this kind of town of Andred and going to the mining colony, or just a mine outside of Andred, and seeing what the situation there is. One of the players feels in their bones that there's going to be something there. So I have no idea. It's one of the kind of few hexes that doesn't have a monster or a distinct point of interest associated with it. So we're going to have a click around, see if anything immediately like sparks the imagination. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my process for generating a monster of the week style session for 5th edition. So we're going to start by clicking on Andred here and getting up some basic information. So in our notes for this town, it's important to the local coal trade. It's a direct route to Mornburg for exporting coal. Coal's a major part of the economy. It's a working class town with lots of minor, heavy industrial presence. The company, the man, is bad. There's workers' rights issues. Red berets rise up against the company. I don't think that is enough to kind of entice the players, I think that we're going to need some monstrous hook. So let's dive over to D&D Beyond and fire up the monster list. And this is where I start. Anytime I have a session where I need a kind of monster of the week style gameplay, where I don't have an overarching plot for the week and the players are just going to encounter something, have a bit of a fight, do classic kind of D&D gameplay. This is broadly how I will approach it. So we're going to open up a couple tabs here on D&D Beyond. First of all, we want the encounter builder. I'm going to pull in our Jewel Cities of Talavar characters, so our 5 level 11 characters. That'll immediately make the encounter builder accurate. And then we want to get a sense of what is the highest CR creature that this group could comfortably take. So we know that a CR 16 creature is going to be a hard encounter on paper. I know that based on experience as well as the adjustments made in the 2024 rules, that we can go a little bit higher than that. So we can go up to 18,000 XP as our bracket. And we'll just verify that by jumping over into Legend Keeper, grabbing our DM screen, and finding our encounter maker. So our party's level is 15 and 7,800 per PC times 5. That makes 39,000 XP is our encounter budget for the 2024 rules. So pretty substantially higher than the 2014 rules. So we've got a big old section of wiggle room to play with. But I do think that 34,000 is probably too much, because that would take us into well past CR19, and there's no way that they can do that. So let's start with, what was that? CR16 creature. Let's try a CR17. 18,000. So we want to aim for, at the top end, individual monster, CR17. That's our ballpark. So we jump over back to our monsters, and let's start with a CR17 creature and see what jumps out. We're going to turn partnered content on. Partnered content with monsters is about the only time that I use partnered content. I like to get a wider spread of inspiration for that. And we're just going to filter and see what comes up. A lot of dragons, Ando-Sphinxes. What is this? That is a weird looking creature, and I dig it. A Bearnoloth. It's a fiend. They've just fought fiends, so probably wouldn't use that, but it is a cool looking thing. A Death Knight. A Death Knight could be cool, given that it is an OG monster manual creature. It's probably not going to be powerful enough. So it's CR17, but it's only got a plus 11 to hit, so 21 to hit on average. The cleric's AC is 23, so it wouldn't hit the cleric most of the time. It would hit the rest of the party maybe like 70%, 60, 70% of the time. And then damage wise, it would do 28 damage per attack. So that is 60 damage. It might be okay. A Death Knight is an option. I would prefer something more recently published. They tend to be balanced a little better than the original Monster Manual stuff. Especially if we're going solo monster, which not necessarily going to go solo monster. This is just how I typically start the process. So identify the CR range that we're working with, look at solo monsters to see whether there's anything that jumps out and tickles my fancy, which there isn't really anything here. So then we start building an encounter out of multiple monsters. So instead of going for a CR 17 creature, let's drop it down and have a look at something like a CR 11 to 12, because that's around their level. And then a couple monsters that are half their level, and then let's go 4 monsters that are like 1/4 their level, and just see how we sit in the total XP bracket for that. That says, how are you thinking about this with the 6 to 8 encounters per day? I don't think about 6 to 8 encounters per day. I think about this encounter budget on the right hand side here. So you can't actually see that fully on there. So let me go ahead and just grab this window capture. So if I just move this and live edit it. So in the encounter builder on D&D Beyond, as you're building things, the numbers that are important are these ones on the right here, the daily budget. So that's 6 to 8 encounters per day is just a breakdown of this daily encounter budget, which is, for our players, 52,500 XP. If broken down into the medium encounters, which would be 8,000 XP per encounter, 52,500 divided by 8,000 gives us 6.5 encounters. And that's where you get the 6 to 8 encounters per day that's written in the book. In the D&D Next playtest, there was another paragraph in that section that gave a rider to it that's like, this is not a hard and fast rule. If you run harder encounters, run fewer of them. If you run easier encounters, run more of them. And it gave like important context to that 6 to 8 encounters per day. But using the 2014 rules, the daily budget is actually the much more important thing than the number of encounters per day. So I tend to just completely ignore the number of encounters per day and build to the daily budget. So for a single encounter, my starting point is going to be trying to hit the deadly threshold, because I know my players can handle deadlier combats based on their experience as players, the build of their characters, and the items that they're decked out with. They can tend to handle deadly encounters. One or two of them might go down, might even risk one of them dying, but that is the preferred way that they like to play. So I always try and aim for that deadly XP budget, and then as a general rule of thumb, I will ignore the adjusted XP value unless my kind of gut tells me otherwise. So in the 2024 rules, one of the adjustments made for building encounters is it basically tells you not to adjust the XP when you are including multiple opponents, which is something 2014 did tell you to do. So really, I'm looking at this total XP number here, which is between hard and deadly. So a CR12, 2 6s and 4 3s as an encounter should be manageable for this party. If I just threw them in a white box room with all of the creatures right there on top of them, they'd probably get slaughtered. It's much more about the way that you introduce these creatures. So when I'm building encounters like this, what I will usually do is I will usually introduce the monsters in phases. So I will typically not deploy all of these creatures. We've got 7 in this, not necessarily these 7, I've just picked ones in the CR range. We've got 7 creatures. I will usually choose 3 or 4 of them to be on the battlefield at the start, so that I have that wiggle room with the other 3 or 4 to be able to introduce them either in a drip feed or all at once later on, and have it as like 2 encounters right back to back with no chance of a rest. And in doing that, it gives me a lot more flexibility to hold back the monsters if the players are doing really poorly. If the players absolutely slaughter those first batch of monsters really quickly, I can introduce even more monsters, and it gives me just another dial to turn to make sure that if I've made any mistakes building the encounter, I'm not slaughtering the players straight away in the first couple turns. Attracted Diary says, hello there. I just want to say I've been trying Legend Keeper for the last 2 weeks on the free trial and I've been enjoying it. Thanks for talking about it in your videos. You're very welcome. It has been my go-to world building and campaign management tool for like however long it's existed. It's like 4 or 5 years now. I've tried a lot of other tools, and it's the one that I keep coming back to. Des says, I have a habit of just doing 1v1, all spell slots, all features, slugfest, instead of draining them over the day. Yeah, I run a lot of slugfests as well. It's hard to fit a lot of encounters in a day, especially that sort of 6 to 8 level. But that is more of the medium encounters. If you're running hard or especially deadly encounters, you come down to sort of 2 or 3 encounters in a day. And if you are doing anything to deplete the resources before they get into combat, then that skews it again. I have a video here on the channel talking about the whole process of 2014 version of 5th edition encounter building and just how so many people talk about it being broken but also don't build their encounters properly. And I think it's a really useful video to watch and get a different perspective on encounter building. Dicedale says, I would suggest not worrying about whether you slaughter the party or not. What does the encounter track with the situation? It's up to the players to figure out. We need to run away. Exactly. I broadly do that. I will occasionally, I think it's worth keeping in mind kind of a broad band of don't bother putting something in front of your players that is so obviously more powerful than them that they don't stand any chance, because otherwise why bother, unless it's so well advertised to them that there's no way they can misunderstand the situation they're going into. In that case, then I have no sympathy for them. For example, in a previous campaign, I've had a location that they found that literally had warning signs in every single language known to man that was like, stay away from here, terrible danger, you will die. And they chose to ignore all the signs, and it resulted in a TPK. And I was like, well, you can't say that you weren't warned. I don't think that it was inevitable that it would have resulted in a TPK in that encounter. It was just the specifics of how the dominoes fell. But I don't think that it's universal that I will always ignore whether or not to worry about whether to slaughter the party. So in terms of our party, our encounter makeup, I think our big nasty is going to be in the CR12 region. And then we're going to have a couple of bruisers in the CR6-ish region. And then our mooks, our kind of lowest level interference runners, who aren't really there to deal damage to the players. They are there to take action economy away from the players, are going to be CR3. And when we get to figuring out what these monsters are going to be, I'll talk about the roles that they all play. So let's have a look at CR12 creatures and see if anything jumps out at me. Again, a lot of dragons. I'm resisting the urge to go with dragons here purely because I've already run a dragon in a mine in this campaign. Otherwise, a dragon would have been perfect for this. A lot of my decisions when I'm building an encounter like this is going to be vibes based. So this aspect of fire from the Humblewood campaign, that looks sick, and what its abilities actually are might not matter if my kind of vibes forward based approach to building a more monster of the week style encounter kind of builds out. So this aspect of fire I really like. It looks very cool. It has legendary resistances, which is useful for a big boss fight. It's got molten skin, so if anyone gets within range of it, they take damage. That's really nice. gives off light, which means that in the VTT that we play in, I can play with cool effects with lighting. If it takes cold damage, its speed is reduced to 0. That's a nice interactable effect. If it doesn't treat plant life as difficult terrain, whether it plant life, it heals in plant life. That's a really cool aspect. I like that a lot. This is a strong contender. It's got multi-attack, 2 multi-fists, and then a magma throw aspect. Hills balls of molten rock. It's this aspect of fire is giving me real Balrog vibes. Legendary actions: detect, molten fist, and magma barrage. Magma throw action may use this ability if it's not. I like that quite a lot. A group of powerful salamanders with a fire element or 2 at the back of call. Yeah, if we go in with the aspect of fire, it will be a bunch of other fire elementals that will be along with it. But there's like 6 pages of CR12 creatures, so let's have a look at some of the others just to see if anything else jumps out. Again, you see that I am doing this broadly based on the pictures to start with, because for these types of encounters, it's all about the vibes and how the monster looks. I'm a shallow bitch, so how the monster looks is almost more important than anything else. And I am mainly concerned with what can I picture 2 or 3 cinematic standout moments with this monster in mind, and does the visual of it immediately conjure that? So like this Gug, this absolutely grotesque looking thing, it's huge, it's a giant, it's got an enormous maw. If I was using that, I can imagine it like putting creatures in its mouth, swallowing whole. It's got enormous scything talons, chopping down trees. I want to be looking at things and picturing those cinematic moments drawn by the creature. Like this thing, I don't know what it is, but it's gorgeous. And a high fade kind guard. That is very cool. I don't think that I want to go Fae in the direction, but that's a very pretty creature, and it's very cool. It's only medium. It looks like it should be a lot bigger than medium. Like that looks larger than medium. It's got feints and parries. Its abilities are way less cool than it looks, which is unfortunate. A bunch of giants, a bunch of Kireen, whatever that grotesque thing is. Nothing is jumping out to me as much as the aspect of fire, so I think we might end up with the aspect of fire. Although the Relentless Juggernaut is CR12, the players have encountered a Relentless Juggernaut in the past, or like a toned down version of the Relentless Juggernaut. I think it could be funny to encounter the Relentless Juggernaut again in its fully souped up form. That actually might be a lot of fun. That can go in the maybe pile, but it would take a lot of contrivances to get. No, that doesn't work nearly as well, but I will keep that in the back of my mind, that they are now of the level for the fully charged Relentless Juggernaut to come and make a reappearance. A Stalker of Baphomet. Pretty cool. Joshua Lee says boo 5e. That's what we're working with. If you don't like it, you know where the door is. That's cool. Cool bug people. I always love the rock elementals taking revenge against the miners trope. You have a reflavor your fire dude as different elemental. That could work. We have had a similar plot line in this current campaign where the players were hired to go and figure out what was kind of disrupting a particular area. I can't remember that it was around. I think it was around a mine. It was around a mithril mine, and they discovered that there was these like large rock elementals, and mithril is their heart. And they discovered that in my world, all mithril is actually the heart of these ancient stone elementals that are asleep under the earth, and being mined doesn't wake them up. And there just happened to be one that was awake guarding this region, and they had a real, oh god, we have been cursed with knowledge moment. Right, so none of these give me as many vibes as an aspect of fire, because we can set fire to the forest, we can play with fire effects, and do a whole bunch of cool map-based stuff with fire as well. Hey, glad I caught you online again. Welcome in, welcome. So we're going to go aspect of fire as our CR12 creature. And let's show advanced filters. Is this what I want? Yes, I think this is what I want. Yeah. And then we want up to 12 and aspect of fire. And then we can get rid of a bunch of these options. And then we want 2 CR6-ish creatures. So let's start with 6 and see whether we go. And we're going to go elemental for those and filter. And so Mjork Ashes are fine. I have used them in another area, so I don't like to reuse monsters like that too often. So let's drop it down to 5 and see whether we get any other fiery things. Cool. Basic fire elemental is a solid choice, or salamanders. So let's go and have a quick look at both fire elemental and salamander, because we might be able to use one of each. So fire elemental has, it is just 50 feet. Spears, tables, resistances and immunities, move through space, water susceptibility, 2 touch attacks, 2 attacks, one with its spear, one with its tail. Yeah, I think we'll go 1 salamander, 1 fire elemental, just for some visual variety. And then for our little guys, we want something in the region of, we'll go between 3 and 4, given that we've dropped 6 down to a 5. And that gives us sweet nothing. Okay. Nothing with a visual anyway. I don't want to spend a lot of time going and looking for things. Blister coil weird. What are you? Brute formed of water and molten rock. I mean, I could reflavor this to be some kind of slick, oily creature. It's got a fiery internal to it. It feeds on fire. It increases its size category. I like that. That's very fun. If it starts its turn at gigantic size, it releases energy in an explosion. That's really cool. Heated body. I like that. Blister coil weird. Let's go with that. If for nothing else, because we're going to have the aspect of fire dropping fire effects into the battlefield, and these blister coils can be adding to their mass and kind of like moving through the fire, getting larger and larger, and then exploding into lots of little ones again. Let's reread how that ability works. Starts at Gargantuan, release an energy explosion. Each creature within 30 feet must make a dex save, taking fire damage. Explosion ignites, and then it becomes medium. Cool. I like that. So, an aspect of fire, a fire elemental, a salamander, and 4 of these blister coil weirds, which I will rename to be something else. And there will be some kind of other fiery elemental thing related to the aspect of fire, which again will probably get renamed as something else. That takes us to an unadjusted 16-4, and if we up, so we can go up to 5 of the blister coil weirds, or we have space to add in maybe a second elemental or a second salamander. So let's jump over to adventures, and I can remove the window so everything is back where it should be. There we go. And then find my page. So we want create a new page. Adventure 71. Fire, fire, fire. Our session date is going to be the 18th of the 12th, 2024. Our planning is going to be 1 aspect of fire, 1 salamander, 1 fire elemental, and let's go 1 to 2 salamanders, and then 4 blister coil weirds. In terms of loot, generate the loot shortly. Hero moments. So we've had a lot of hero moments for the cleric recently, so we don't want a hero moment for the cleric. We have had some hero moments for the rogue from stealing and doing a lot of kind of kill stealing recently, so the rogue is out. The barbarian got a hero moment and got a special lance last week. So we want a hero moment for either the sorcerer or the wizard. The wizard got kind of a hero moment in banishing the monster last week, so let's focus on a hero moment for the sorcerer, which is going to mean we want to have a look at the sorcerer class and see if there's anything to be mindful of when it comes to the sorcerer's abilities that we can kind of work around to give the sorcerer that standout hero moment. So they're level, so a bunch of meta magics, which they have quickened and subtle spell as their meta magics currently, I believe. So that doesn't give us a lot of information. Meta magic. Ability scores, sorcerer's origin, and they are Divine Soul, I want to say. I'm actually not 100% sure off the top of my head. Empowered healing, that sounds about right. Nothing jumps out in sorcerer itself, so we'd be looking at spells, sorcerer spells that might come in clutch for this. Let's go 2, 3, and 5th level spells. So the whole purpose of this is to make sure that we're kind of creating space to allow at least one of the players, in this case the sorcerer, to give them all of the opportunities to have a really cool hero moment. Whether they take it, whether they kind of capitalize on all of those opportunities, who knows. But I want to be mindful of trying to make it so that at least one of the players each session feels like a goddamn hero, because that's the whole point of playing D&D and not Morkborg. We want the players to feel like goddamn heroes. So a lot of it is just going to be creative uses of spells, I think, is what it's going to come down to. Will be interesting spell use between the sorcerer and maybe the wizard. So in terms of where they are going to go, they're going to go up to Andred. They're going to fight the aspect of fire. So let's make a note of this. So go to Andred. Learn about bad stuff. This is the level of depth that we need for this stage of planning, because, like I said, this is a very Monster of the Week style. I was going to say episode, and then I was going to say issue. Session, that is the word. A very Monster of the Week style session. So we don't need a lot of depth in terms of the setup and the payoff. Like, we all as players know kind of broadly what the deal with this kind of session is. They're turning up to kick butt and get loot. You know, this is not a deep lore based session, or typically it won't be. So they're going to go to Andred, learn about some bad stuff, as adventurers want to do. They'll have a bit of travel, and then they'll have a fight. So in terms of loot, that'll probably be the last thing we need. NPCs, we need like maybe 2 to 3 kind of point of view NPCs, like talking NPCs that they need to interact with, and I think that will probably just be a randomly rolled thing on the night. Just pull up one of my go-to NPC generators, generate a couple of NPCs, because who they are doesn't matter. They are just there to move the players in the right direction. When it comes to these style of sessions, these filler sessions, these Monster of the Week sessions, you can be much looser in the planning and much less precious. Like, what the players will remember from this session is the fight, is the cool stuff that the monster does and the cool stuff that they do in response. They're not going to remember the NPCs unless you go out of your way to make them memorable, and you can go out of your way to make them memorable. Some of the more memorable NPCs I think I've ever run have been accidentally memorable and kind of offhand NPCs in these situations, but in general, you don't need to worry about making a memorable NPC when the function of the NPC is to go, players, you've arrived. There's bad stuff over there. Go and deal with the bad stuff. Players, you've dealt with the bad stuff. Here is your reward. They exist purely for the exposition versus an NPC that the players need to interact with multiple times. If the players need to interact with an NPC multiple times, I want to put a lot more effort. But these NPCs, they're never going to see them again. And if they do return to this place, then I'll worry about adding more information. So the way that I handle a lot of this, if I jump over to the map portion of Legend Keeper here, I will pull up my page for Andred, and you can see that there is a key NPCs table kept in a secret block. So during the session, when I generate those NPCs, I will note down the generated information in that key NPC section here. If the players ever do return back through this way, I'll look in that key NPC section, see the information that I generated, then expand upon that, make them more interesting, add more depth and complexity to them. But it's certainly not something that I need to do for what should be a one and done moving through the town. Same with the town itself. In terms of the look of the town, the feel of the town, all of the information about the town, that is not something I'm worried about in the slightest, because the town is not the focus. The focus of the session is the monster and the fight. So the players will arrive in town I know that it is a mining town. I know that it is a kind of traditional kind of company town where the workers are disgruntled at the man and being worked too hard. I can picture the kind of western frontier towns that is inspired from in my mind. Just draw inspirational descriptions from those to describe the kinds of people that they're seeing there, the kinds of buildings as they move through. They don't need a map. They don't need a description of all the kinds of buildings that are there, the number of buildings or what kind of buildings there are. We don't need an AD&D level description of the settlement where we know what's in every single person's pockets for this kind of session. All we need is a name of the town, a vibe, and then the bare bones of life in it to point them to the big monster that they're going to fight. What is going to be way more important in this session is going to be a map. And anytime that I want a map for a session like this, the first place that I go to is Chepeku, specifically because they have this awesome map browser where you can go through, you can search by terms, or just browse through a big long list, and then that'll link you to their Patreon. I'm a patron of theirs, so I can go and grab the files, load them into Foundry. It makes the prep stage of it, the kind of practical prep stage where I'm loading things into Foundry, getting things ready to go, much quicker and easier. So I'm going to start off by just searching for fire as a tag, because I want to see if there's any maps that have developing fire. So like Celestial Chapel interior. So we've got a chapel that's on fire. That's not what I want. A shrine that's on fire. I like the vibes of the fire here. That is a lot of fire. There's too much terrain going on in the fire element one though, which is unfortunate. Goblin Fortress, Iron Age Hamlet. Iron Age Hamlet might be a solid one. Look at all this fire. So if we look at it without, we would need to find one. This has got a load of water. We don't want a bunch of water. We'd want a dry ground one, which there doesn't seem to be one. That's really unfortunate. I was really hoping to find, that would have been an ideal one otherwise. Idrisil Trunk, that's a lot of fire. Wizard Prison, Village Hunting Guild. No, that's not enough fire. We need to strike a balance. The Iron Age Hamlet has got the vibes real well. Eldritch Church, no. Started to use Chepeku as well because you really love the quality. It's awesome. Like I said, pretty much any time that I need a map, it's the first place I go, because the map browser is awesome and there's usually a bunch of different variations. Like, I had no idea that the Opera House had an on fire version. I've used like 2 different versions of this Opera House in different campaigns before, and just being able to pull really great looking maps without having to do like any busy work, because that's the thing. I find myself so short of prep time so frequently these days. Being able to go, oh cool, this map broadly fits the vibe, looks great, and I can pull it into Foundry and everything's all queued up. So worthwhile to me. Right, so the fire isn't vibing. The Iron Age Hamlet is the only one that I really like. That is the kind of level of fire that I want to see from the kind of end game of this fight. So we go back to the explore map page and just scroll through a few and see whether anything kind of jumps out. We can go for mine and see whether anything jumps out from mine. Abandoned mine entrance. That's pretty basic. Desert Canyon. We're not in a desert. Modular caves is too much to keep track of, and infested mines is not going to be the one. Cloud Forest Giant Camp. You can find one that's got some fire. I mean, I can make fire easily enough. It is going to broadly be a case of searching for a transparent fire PNG token, placing that into Foundry, and adding some light effects around it. So really, I need to abandon the idea that I need a fire map and think about what actual map I want it built around. So it's probably going to be some kind of forest, because I want plenty of fuel sources for our fire givers, and we want something large enough for those blister things, the blister coil weirds, which will definitely get renamed because they're too long, to grow into truly just bonkers sizing. Turtle Nerd says that the first map makers I've come across that have good desert maps. Most places are either AI, boring, or empty. Yeah, it's hard to find really good desert maps. I ran a whole campaign set in a monobiome desert for like 2 years, and finding maps was a real chore. It was a lot of like making a blank desert canvas in Incarnate and then just putting different bits on top of it. This green dragon's lair is quite pretty. Probably too much water. Village Bakery has a nice expanse of green for it to be like a battlefield. Roadside ambush is probably... This roadside ambush wouldn't be too bad. I would prefer it without the camp, but then it wouldn't... This is the problem when it comes to finding maps. If you get a really specific vision of what you want in your head, and then getting real like zeroed in on that, and thinking this is the only vision that I will accept, and then you really struggle to find maps that fit. I have used that map before, so I can't use that one. Let's go with... Let's go back to the explore page and go into themes. Greatwood? This is more like it. Jousting tournament. Nice open plain. This might be the one. Quaint village school is an option. I want something... Greenery, fairly open, fairly large, but a decent number of trees. This one might do. Pastoral Village Stables. So we're going to copy the link to that and paste that into our planning, so that when I'm coming back to do it, I can re-pull that in easily enough. In terms of which version to use, ideally, I'd like to use the night one. Anytime I'm using light-based effects, I like to use the night maps because you can really show off the lighting within Foundry. But I quite like this map that's got all of the buildings in it, and then have the buildings catch fire, interact with them. The large creature could throw players into the buildings. That could be quite cool. Yeah, I quite like that actually. Yeah, maybe we use this one and have it be a case of I'd been operating under the assumption problem has to be in the mine, because the players had been like, we're going to the mine. I've got a feeling that there's going to be a problem in the mine, and that had kind of warped my perception of what was going to go on in this session. And I actually think that this map could be a lot of fun. There's plenty of interactable elements in it. There's plenty of wooden elements for fuel for our fire, and having stuff to throw the players. I love throwing player characters into stuff when you've got big creatures in play. So let's go with the abandoned version specifically, and then make a note of eat the PCs into stuff around the map, set fire to it, let my minions grow, and get a real Rita Repulsa vibe going on. And then in terms of loot, we click on or hover over the items the party want. Let's open that in a new tab and have a look at it. So in terms of our options here, Wrestles had his Cloak of Displacement, so we can strike that through. We've also had the legendary item relating to Clavo, and we've also had a deck of many things come up. We've had a Ring of Regeneration as an option come up, and Angus has got something recently. Diddy's had something recently, so let's go for something for Devani, given that we don't have a list of things for Cornelius the Wizard, so he's not giving me a list of items that he's interested in. If we're highlighting Devani, our sorcerer, in this session, then we can go with her as our option. So sorcerer shards, so let's go and look at the shards as magic items and see whether one of them would work. So there's a whole bunch of them. So the astral shard, as an action, you attach the shard to a tiny object or detach it. It falls off if your attunement ends. Meta magic: while holding the shard, immediately after casting the spell, you can teleport to an unoccupied space. Very cool. Let's have a look when you can use slimy tentacle. Ew. I want like a fire shard. This might need to be something that has to be made, which isn't necessarily a problem. It might just be a case of having a look at a couple of the shards that currently exist. So Feywild, Far Realm, Astral Shard, Shadowfell Shard. So they're all attuned to a plane. Momentarily curse one creature target by a spell, choose one ability until a creature has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws that use that ability. Cool. So I think broadly what it's going to be is, so for the loot, it is going to be a Fireplane Shard, which will be a homebrew item, and I will look to the existing planar shards for inspo. That isn't something that I need to worry about immediately, because they're not going to get this as loot until the end of the session. This shard will be embedded into the big monster, and they'll get it for defeating the big monster wherever the big monster is, the aspect of fire. So they'll get this fire plane shard for defeating the aspect of fire. That'll be at the end of the session. I can say to them, cool, you'll get this thing. I will tell you what it does in the next session. Then we're going to have 2 weeks off because it's Christmas and New Year. So I get like 3 weeks to figure out what this shard actually does. So again, I don't need to use a lot of time now to think about what it does. I just need to give myself a broad direction of where to go to look for inspiration of how these things work mechanically. So it'd be looking at the Shadowfell, Feywild, Fire Realm, and Astral Shards, those 4 shards, seeing what abilities they have and what they do, and creating a new shard for the fire plane. And to be honest, I'll probably make one for each of the elemental planes while I'm at it, put them in SIDEQUEST, my monthly RPG magazine, and figure out how they will work. But I think that's pretty much everything that I need to do to figure out what's going to happen in this session. They're going to go to the town of Andred. They're going to figure out or hear about bad stuff going down. Who they hear that from, I'll roll for it on the night from an NPC generator. Where specifically this building set that they're going to have their fight is in relation to the town. Again, figure it out on the fly. This is kind of the beauty of the style of world building that I've done with the large world map for the Jewel Cities of Talavar. Is it's a lot of placing points of interest to use as a jumping off point and then figuring it out on the day, which is a lot of the way that I like to run my games. Is huge amounts of upfront work for the world and then figure everything out for the campaign itself on the day. So they'll fight the fire elemental and the salamanders and the little fire elemental, these growing blister coils. I'm actually quite excited to use those blister coils. I like creatures that increase in size over time. It's always a really fun thing to use. The fact there are 4 of them, the fact that they explode when they get big enough, and that they are fed by a fire. I think there's going to be some really interesting synergies going on in this fight, which should make it really interesting to run. And yeah, it'll just be a good middle of the road Monster of the Week session. God, why do you always come in, Goop, just as I'm talking about what it is that we're going to do for the sessions? Told you, you're banned. You're not allowed in. You'll give yourself all kinds of spoilers. So I think that is the session prep done. So like we do every time we do one of these streams, we're going to end off just with some general Q&A. So if you have questions about anything relating to session prep, to world building, anything like that, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Jason asks, what map making tool are you using now? I am currently using Incarnate for pretty much all of my personal map making. So this Jewel Cities map was made using Incarnate. The current version of the world map, when that loads up, is made using Incarnate, and also the Planes of Existence map has been made using Incarnate. When I do make battle maps, which is rare these days because they take so long, I use Incarnate for that as well. Joseph says, so you've been designing demons for some time. What's different about your world's devils? That's a really good question. I don't know is the answer. Broadly, I think I am not a huge fan of the idea that devils are just inherently evil. I think that a lot of them will be evil, more as a reaction to circumstance. But I think one of the kind of defining traits of devils in my universe is more their lawfulness. So the most famous devilish thing in my world is the Infernal Court, which is the cosmic courtroom. So it is run by devils, and there's a whole bunch of just grossness in there that you would look at and you go, well, that's clearly evil. But it is kind of the premier legal institution across the cosmos. It's where gods go to settle their legal disputes. It's where the gods go to sue each other over things, and that is all run by devils. And yes, devils are probably evil, but they are also very sticklers for the rules and the regulations. And as long as you have the contract signed and the I's dotted and the T's crossed, then you can trust a devil way more than you can trust most creatures, because a devil will only betray you in the ways not outlined in their contract. If you've written a contract that is ironclad enough, a devil is going to be your best friend, which I really like. My players have used that really well in some of our previous campaigns. They have written contracts to give to devils to bind them into their service in the late stages of campaigns in the past, and hired devils as retainers to help them in battle. And it was a lot of fun watching them work out all of the particulars of the contract to try and figure out how they were going to be able to convince the devils kind of to get them to play along and all that kind of stuff. That was really fun. Also, is there any service that's good for presenting a game to players? I use World Anvil for right now. I wonder if there's a more intuitive option for presenting. So what I use is Legend Keeper. It's what I do all of my world building in, and it does have the option for sharing your world with the players so they can view it in a wiki style. I've shared a link in the chat. Anyone that does check it out and decide to pick it up, if you use the link there and the code ANTO at checkout, you get 20% off your first payment. That's monthly or annual. I've been using Legend Keeper now for like 5 years, so ever since it first came out. So I reached out to Legend Keeper and I was like, have you got an affiliate scheme? If not, can you make one and give me one? And they're like, we do not have an affiliate scheme, but we will make one and give you one. So that's something that I've just started doing because I have been using it for so long, and it is kind of my go-to world building tool. How would the devils enforce their rules against gods? A court is only as good as its enforcers. So in terms of kind of like the cosmic godly rulings and agreements and stuff with the infernal court, the way I think about it is very much like the gods are in a constant state of Cold War, and they have previously been in like a hot war, and the entire cosmos was just like a whole mess. And now the gods are in this Cold War state where they don't directly intervene in the material plane. It's very taboo. They work through religions, through agencies, through cults. That's fine, but they try not to get directly involved. At best, an avatar will show up, but that's real big news. But then when it comes to infernal law and the infernal courts, it's very much a case of, if we don't all agree to this, we'll dissolve back into a hot war. And it's easier for us to just all be like, yeah, okay, we all agree to this, to avoid us just constantly being at war with each other. Is your fugue plane underworld in the ethereal plane? No. So my fugue plane is the soul realm, which is its own distinct thing. It's like a mirror of the material realm, and it's like the cosmic way station. So you die in the material plane, your soul leaves your body, it goes to the soul realm, and then it's kind of like waiting for a bus in the soul realm, and the goddess Alaria is responsible for shepherding souls from the soul realm to their final resting place among the cosmos. So whichever plane they end up in largely depends on which gods you worship, whether you've made any kind of sacrifices or pledged yourself to any of the gods. And that kind of transfer of souls to all of the outer planes is how the gods get a lot of their power. So encouraging mortals to either pledge themselves, sacrifice themselves to the gods is how the gods kind of gain power, by kind of collecting souls. And then that is why demons specifically are such big problems cosmically, because the way demons work is by destroying the soul of a mortal and then puppeting the body. So the cult only functions until a god gets handed a hard enough verdict that they prefer open war. Do you know of gods who might prefer war? There are gods that have preferred war, and there is an entire prison realm for them, which is Haber. Haber is the eternal prison. So previously one of kind of a demigod, Parax, the War Master, funnily enough, declared war on the material plane and went full ham, took over the soul realm, stopped the flow of souls, invaded the material realm, and caused all kinds of problems for the entire cosmic order. And when he was eventually defeated, he was kind of slapped in like god irons and sent off to Haber, which is the eternal prison, the cosmic jail for god level threats and powers and entities, things that can't be held in other places. And he was defeated basically by a coalition of other gods and their forces. Several of the good aligned gods, the goddess of protection, the goddess of the sun, the traveler. Who else was involved? Clavo got involved. There were 4 or 5 of the sort of goodish gods involved, and a couple of the evil aligned gods got involved as well, acting through the players and through agents in the material plane to kind of defeat Parax, get him shipped off to Haber. And then similarly, when I was running my Ashk campaign and the players inadvertently started the apocalypse, there was devils in Ashk fighting to prevent the apocalypse because it was very demonic focused. So when things do kick off, unless you have a deity who's got kind of a majority with other deities willing to go against the status quo with them, one deity or a couple of deities kicking off and being like, right, we're not going to abide by the rule of the Infernal Court, we're not going to play by the rules, we're just going to invade the mortal realm, would mean that all of the others basically gang up on them to maintain the status quo, because they're very like, maintain what we've got rather than risk it all crumbling and dissolving into chaos again. And it's a constant like ebb and flow, because, you know, they're at their heart incredibly ego-filled beings. You don't get to godhood without an incredible ego. So where is my button? There. So if anyone's got any other questions, go ahead, fire them off in the chat. I'm going to go and post some links while you're thinking of them. First thing I'm going to post is to our Discord server. So if you want to get involved and chat with a whole bunch of other folks, go ahead and follow that link to join the Discord. And then I also will post a link to my Drive-Thru RPG, where you can find a whole bunch of free PDFs and stuff for campaign planning and for adding printable DM screen inserts and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's also my Patreon. Did I press the button? I did press the button, I think. Yeah, where you can find SIDEQUEST magazine, which has just hundreds and hundreds of pages of 5th edition goodness in the vaults over there, and down beneath this video somewhere, and as indicated here, is it over here? So somewhere over here, there's also channel memberships as well. So if you want to support what I do and get even more videos and more behind the scenes stuff, you can sign up to be a channel member, and you get shiny icons next to your name in the chat and stuff, and it's all good stuff. I'm going to be posting a lot more channel members content in January. So in January, I'm going to be taking the month off from posting kind of regular content, and I'll still be doing live streams and doing more members stuff, because January tends to be a quiet month for YouTube. So I'm going to focus more on doing members content and live streams, which will be a lot of fun. Joseph says, I know you're still playing around in Talabar and the Jewel Cities, but are there any other areas of the world that you're getting pretty excited to explore? let's have a look and see which parts of the world are Jimmy in my jams right now. So I'm still pretty enticed by the dual cities because it's a pretty large area, and the players have explored very little of it. I intentionally made it, my thinking going into it was I wanted an area large enough that I could run multiple campaigns in one region and not have to jump around the world like I had for previous campaigns. So my next campaign probably will stay in the dual cities, especially if I run for a different group. But I would like to go over back to Valen, to where my last couple of campaigns have been, explore more of the Deadlands, which is a section kind of ruled by a Lich King who gained his power by eating the heart of a dragon, or so the legends say, and controls a vast army of undead, and is in like a war with the Parthian Empire. And that region of the world is something that I am very interested in exploring, and have been very interested in exploring for quite a long time. How does divinity work in your world? Essentially, if you claim you are a god and are powerful enough to defend that claim, then you are a god. Functionally, the people of the world will view it very, very differently, but mechanically, the gods are just incredibly powerful creatures that are able to impart their power to others, and you just need to be a high enough level and then defend your claim to be a god. One of the players in my first campaign, their late game arc was achieving godhood, so they learned about an artifact that will allow them to cast like an epic version of Wish, and they had seen some interaction of time magic, and they decided that they wanted to wish for themselves to become the goddess of time, and they spent months working towards this goal. And when the campaign ended, they managed to track down all the necessary bits and bobs and do all the fetch quests and get all the MacGuffins, and they ended up joining the Pantheon as the goddess of time. And then they have been the goddess of time and have always been the goddess of time, because that's how, you know, wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff works. And they had just achieved a level of power that allowed them to defend that claim. If they'd done it at like a level 10, then obviously a more powerful creature would come along and kind of slap them back into level 5. But they were a high enough level and had commands of magics and various, you know, cloning, simulacrum, the ability to cheat death, that meant that they could make the claim that they're a god. They could do godly looking things. They had access to wishes, and to a regular person, there's no functional difference. And then over time, you know, maybe there is some divine element that comes into it, but initially you just need to make the claim and survive long enough to back it up. So how we do with time? Almost 10 to 10. Go ahead for one or two more questions if anyone has them before we call it for the evening, because my brain is starting to turn to soup, and I still have Christmas presents to wrap and 3D prints to take off the 3D printer and prep to do for tomorrow's workday. It's never ending this time of year. It's a relentless barrage. Oh, but no, as I said, let me check the dates. Yeah, we probably won't do a stream next week or the week after because it's Christmas Eve, then New Year's Eve. Certainly won't be doing one New Year's Eve because I will be out. and almost certainly won't do one next week. So our next stream will probably be first week of January, fresh in the new year, which will be fun. Like I said, my goal in January is to do a bunch of live streams and a bunch of members videos, and few, if any, of the regular videos, because the regular videos usually perform pretty poorly in January. So I'd rather focus on doing live streams and doing members content, and then kind of pick up normal, regularly scheduled programming towards the end of the month after a bit of a break, because I also need to fulfill a Kickstarter and do a whole bunch of other work in January. But we'll be here with the live streams in January. So I hope you all have a wonderful holiday period. I hope you've enjoyed this evening, enjoyed looking at my adventure prep process, doing some world building stuff. As always, thank you for getting involved in the chat. It's always so much more fun when you get involved and ask questions and do all the chatting. That's the whole point of doing this, to be able to hang out with you all and keep connected with you all. Have you ever considered keeping your hair down? Still catches me off guard. I would keep it down more. I had literally gotten out of the bath 5 minutes before we started streaming, and most streams we start like just after I get in the bath. So when it's wet, it kind of like slaps me in the face and gets on my nerves. The main reason I wear it up for videos is continuity, honestly, because you'll notice in the videos where I do have it down, I play with it a lot, and with the cuts you can see it like flipping all over the place. So at least when it's up in between shots, it's harder to notice that I've made a cut, because you can't just see my entire hair just like rotating around my head. The bath is absolutely the best building location. I do a lot of world building in the bath. That's where I've had some of my best ideas, in the bath and while out walking. Anytime I turn my brain off. But yeah, anytime I take the hair down, someone is always in the comments like, I didn't know you had long hair. So it's always happened. Like, yeah, it's been this long the whole time. But yeah, I sometimes I'll wear it down just to see what happens in the edit, because it freaks out watching the cuts as I'm going through and editing, because I don't notice, because I talk with my hands a lot, and when my hair is down I talk with my hands in my hair a lot, and I don't really pay attention to it as I'm delivering to camera. And then when I'm having to edit it, you really notice the things that you do subconsciously when you're staring at yourself for like hours at a time. When I first started, the number of ums and ahs and connective words like that I had to cut out. I speak with so many fewer of those now, and I take lots of longer pauses in my regular speech. It's become a real problem. I will be speaking in my regular day-to-day, and I will just stop and go silent for like half a minute, because that's where previously I would have put an or an ah, but I've kind of trained myself out of them because I hated editing them out. So I'll be speaking to someone, and instead of going or ah, I'll just dead silence for like 30 seconds as my brain is processing what I'm trying to say, and then I'll pick up, and quite often people will start speaking, and then I'll be like, oh no, I'm not finished. My brain was just catching up with whatever I was trying to say. I couldn't appreciate how you couldn't realize that wasn't the case, because I was quiet for so long. How long does it take to cut those out? I've been trying, but it's hella hard. A long time. I probably spent like 6 months maybe cutting them out before I was like, I really need to just not put these in. And scripting out every word really helps initially, but it brings its own problems with like spending a long time scripting. Now what I typically do is like a hybrid, so it's long pause instead of ums, and again it's elements of bullet notes and then scripted specific parts if I have a really like technical element that I want to stay. So like most of my ad reads are scripted because it's important for the sponsors to hit the specific beats that they have for the product. A lot of my intros are scripted because they need to hit specific information in the first 30 seconds. But then broadly in the body of the video, it's kind of like bullet points to try and keep things moving, but also give me a direction to go. So I'm not spending heaps of time writing out every single word, because that takes up its own huge chunk of time. It's just one of those behind the scenes things. Yeah, saying the phrase over and over again definitely helps. You'll see in like some of my cuts and my blooper reels and things that there are certain sentences that I'll get stuck on time and time again when I'm scripting things that for some reason I just get real stuck on, or at least I used to. Now I've gotten much better at scripting things out, and then I read it aloud before I ever get close to recording it, and you very quickly find out what you're going to stumble over the first couple of times you read it aloud, just to yourself in that writing phase. And what I've been doing a lot recently is just dictating my scripts and my bullet points. So I just Windows H into Google Docs and just speak, and then like split it all up. Do I publish blooper reels? I'd love to watch them. I don't. I used to. I think a couple of the early videos had some bloopers in them, but they're surprisingly hard to do because you have to like specifically keep the bloopers and either move them all to one spot, which slows down the workflow, or like keep them all over the side. I've had a couple of videos. Let me switch to this one so I can jump into my YouTube studio without you seeing all of the back end stuff and seeing the best. There is one unlisted. Yeah, I think this is the only blooper that has survived on the channel as its own distinct video, because a lot of the time I'll be just in the moment editing and going like the clappers, cutting things out, versus focusing on the bloopers. Tend to write in a more formal way, so it's kind of clunky when recording if you don't say it aloud before hitting the recording button. Exactly. If you're not, you figure out where your problem points are very quickly once you start reading things aloud. Same with the edit. So when I first started, I would just sit down, talk to camera, fine. Now what I do a lot of the time is I will talk to myself, my editing self, to tell myself to do things in the edit, whether that be I'll get to the end of a section, deliver into camera and realize that it would have been better served earlier in the section and be like, yo, editor me, put that somewhere else. Or whether I realize that I want to add specific effects or like a visual gag, I will tell myself that sometimes either in the script as I'm writing it out or as I'm recording it. And especially if something makes me laugh, if I make myself laugh while I'm delivering something, I'll almost always give myself some editorial note to be like, make sure you do something to highlight this because it made me chuckle while I was recording it. And if it made me chuckle while I was recording it, it'll probably make me chuckle in the edit. And if it makes me chuckle in the edit, it'll end up in the final thing. I've been trying to incorporate more humor and more edit-y stuff like that, especially in the last batch of videos. So I've gone back to batch filming my videos instead of being on the treadmill of recording every single week, which is something that I'm always trying not to do, but it's one of those things. It's hard not to be on that treadmill because it's just the life of making videos for a living. But I managed to batch film a whole group of videos recently, and when I batch film videos, I can spend much longer on the edit of them, and I feel like the editing really improves for it and has a lot of benefits in terms of using extra like clips from movies and doing visual gags and stuff. Like this week's video on Shadow Dark has just a really small little stupid Frozen joke in it that every time I see it makes me laugh, and the entire time I was doing it involves my face plastered over Anna from Frozen, and just the whole time I was doing it I was giggling because it's so dumb, and that's my favorite editing style, just being so dumb. That was a whole wild tangent, didn't expect to go on, but that's what we're here for. I am going to wrap it up there though, because it's getting close to my bedtime and I've got a whole bunch of presents left to wrap. But I hope that you've enjoyed this evening. I hope that you found it helpful. Do check out all of the links in the description and stuff. Consider becoming a channel member if you're interested. I hope you found inspiration in watching me plan out my sessions and all of that good stuff, and I shall see you in the new year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, enjoy your holidays, relax. I'm gonna try to, I'll be back in the new year for more streams and more video goodness, and until then, happy gaming.